Hello everybody and welcome to have a closer look of my 1975 Chevrolet Camaro. And this is my fun track day cruiser rally car, do it all. Just fun build that you don't have to be concerned about scratching it or anything. So I got this car 11 years ago. I swapped my old motocross bike for it, and it was just a rusted out rolling chassis with no engine, no transmission, no interior, and it was in pretty bad shape. So it took me a few years to get it back on the road, but now it's been a few years I've been driving it, and I've done a road course with it. I've done a rallycross with it. I've done ice racing with it. I went to the drag strip with it. And I've took it to some cruising nights, and it just, you can do everything with it. It didn't have the lower side of the front end when it came to me, but I did make one out of sheet metal. I'll edit some pics here. But last weekend when I was on the ice, this happened. So I went over an icy berm and it ripped half of the front end with it, but now I'm putting it back together. I built it as a tribute to old racing Camaros that had a series here in Finland. I think I'll just go from the front to the back and tell a bit about it as I'm going. So the oil cooler used to live down here on the front wing. It actually is from an industrial heat exchanger. But I'll have to replace it now because it got bent up pretty badly. There's just some basic aluminium radiator. The engine is a generation 6 454. It was pulled out of a 91 Suburban, but when I tore it down, the block is actually an aftermarket Gen 6 4th bolt main block. It has Eagle cast crank, Speed Pro forged dome pistons, peanut port heads that I've ported myself, and Edelbrock RPM air gap intake, Holley 850 double pumper carburetor, and a bit steeper hydraulic flat tappet camshaft, and it makes 404 horsepower and a little over 600 Newton meters of torque. I have stock upper and lower control arms, but I've relocated the upper control arm a little bit to get more caster and more camber, so it's better suited for the track. In the front I have big 4-piston Wilwood calipers with big floating Brembo rotors, and I have adjustable proportioning valve so I can adjust the brake balance between front and rear. Okay, so here's a better look at the brakes. So these are old NASCAR calipers, or I don't know if these are actually been on a NASCAR car, but when I asked for the pads on them from Wilwood, they replied that these are old NASCAR calipers that I have here. And the rotor, as mentioned before, is a Brembo floating one. Means that it's not rigid on the center hub, so it can expand more with the heat and it doesn't affect the braking as much. And since even in the street I run pretty wide wheels, actually here's one that's currently my gaming bench. Here you can see the street wheel and tire I'm running. So there's some fender flares to cover the wheels. And now on the lake, on the ice road track, I've been running these dualies that I made myself. I cut the center out of the outer rim and I bolted the rims together, and they actually work very well. They only needed little weights to get balanced, and they have good traction and they don't wear out so fast. And of course they look much better than only one narrow tire. On the interior there is basic racing wheel, basic racing buckets, and only the necessary gauges. And of course there's a child seat in the middle, so I can take both my daughters to go with me. And of course there's racing harnesses and there's also a cage, but sadly the cage is not up to spec, so I can't do any real racing with it, but it's good enough for me to go on the track and have fun. The transmission is a Tremec T56 6-speed manual, and so I had to build the clutch pedal. I made it myself, and I actually made the clutch cable operated. The windows are polycarbonate with only small vents, and here in the back there is a small rear wing to give me more downforce on the track. Here in the back there's the battery, fire extinguisher, a new belt, and a new clutch cable. And of course it has a trailer hitch, so I can get my gear to the track with this car. The original rear differential was shot, and now I've installed a Yukon Duragrip limited slip differential. It has held up so far quite nicely. In the rear there is stock suspension, but I've added coilovers next to it, so I have an adjustable spring rate and a little bit more dampening. I don't know if you can see, but I've also made a Panhard bar. Now that I have the car a little bit checked up, you can see the subframe connectors I made, so it stiffens the body and the chassis. And here are the rear brakes, or also Willwood 4-piston calipers, massive calipers, and not as big as rotor as in the front, but big enough for the rear. And here you can see the added coilover next to the original shock. And now you can see the Panhard bar a little bit better, made out of my favorite material. I originally made it as a temporary test bench, but it works so good, so it's been there for many years now. And here in the rear I deleted the original bumper that weighed 40 kilos and just put sheet metal instead, so it saved me about 39 kilos on weight. And there are also cult tracks here that actually were on the car when it came to me. Now I replaced the old oil cooler with this new one. This is actually an Opel heater core, but it works very well as an oil cooler. I also reinforced the front end and fixed the lights, put them back in, and also made new brackets for the fan, and now it's back on again. I still have to redo these, or then I'll maybe just straighten these out a little bit more. They were pretty messed up. I've already straightened them quite a bit. And they used to live down here, quite like this. Underneath them was the front splitter that got pretty mangled up too. So that's pretty much it. That's my 1975 454 Chevrolet Camaro.